Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Karen Brownlee, and I am the Adult Program Coordinator with the North Suburban YMCA. In that role, I bring programs to adults in our community, ranging from brain games to social networking to the Adult Education Series, which you are attending today. The Adult Education Series is always free and open to the public. However, if you would like to support the North Suburban YMCA and our programming, donations are always welcome. If you would like to donate to the Y, please email me and I will be happy to let you know how. Thanks for joining us for Senior Living 101, what to consider when preparing for a senior living during a pandemic. Today, you will learn about the types of communities available, the necessary steps to take before finding a community, and what to think about in your own considerations. Plus, today's presenter, Nancy Pappas. Nancy, you want to give us a wave? Of senior living experts will answer your questions about senior living. Nancy has been involved with senior living in various sales and marketing roles for the past 30 years. With so many choices available, she offers insight when it comes to the emotional, financial, and practical pieces of the puzzle involved in making the decision to move. And I will let Nancy take it from here.
Thank you very much, Karen. You know, before we get started, I think there's some background noise.
Yeah, Misha, would you mind?
I think that might be you. Don't mean to call you out.
Apologies. Okay, I'll mute myself.
Thank you.
All right.
Still not mute, Misha.
Still not. You know what? I can mute him. Let me do the muting.
Thank you.
That might help.
Thank you very much.
All right. Very good.
Thank you so much for having me, Karen. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today. My name is Nancy Pappas, and I'm a Senior Care Advisor for Senior Living Experts, a personal concierge referral company that's been around for 15 years that I just joined about 2 years ago. I've been in senior living since 1989 and sort of fell into it through an ombudsman program where I was visiting nursing homes in Kansas City. And then with my marketing degree, was offered a position, and the rest, as they say, is history. So I've worked for many different types of senior living communities in many different markets. And obviously in that 30-year time span, it has changed tremendously. So I hope to answer your questions, especially how to navigate senior living in the Chicagoland area. It's very complex, and we'll get started with some general information. Misha? So to give you an idea of what is available out there, this is a chart that we created that talks about the level of care and supervision needed versus the cost spectrum. And as you can see by all the little circles, there is a lot to offer. Years and years ago, this all started with simply a nursing home, or the home as we call it. Maybe many of your parents or grandparents, as you remember, when they couldn't be at home anymore, they went to a nursing home. Well, through the years, that worked until it became way too expensive for people to tolerate for any long-term type of setting. And people are living longer with more complex issues. So they are living longer with more chronic ailments that require some simple care, not necessarily medical care, to keep them as independent as possible. So we start with this spectrum on the left, which really talks about all the independent lifestyles that are available, what's known as independent living. It's active senior living. It could be congregational living. It could be a group of seniors getting together. Sometimes it's a condo complex that just naturally becomes a retirement community. The last one is the big purple circle, is what's called a continuing care retirement community that decided to include independent and all the other levels of care. But what you can know about independent living is that It's basically that next step from your home to maintenance-free living. So the goal is to sort of get rid of all of the burdens of homeowning, not have to worry about maintenance. Even meals are added, transportation, and in most places, activities and programs. As we age and become isolated in our homes, this becomes a huge problem. So this level of living really is helpful for that person who physically is well, maybe has some issues that they're managing on their own, or perhaps caring for a spouse or loved one, but really needs to get rid of the home owning burdens. Then in the middle, we have what's called assisted living, personal care, I'm not ready to go yet, respite care. Assisted living is that stage that, in addition to all the amenities and services offered in independent living, there is an element of personal care for activities of daily living. And these are the simple things like personal care, bathing, dressing, showering. Perhaps someone is recovering from an illness or a surgery and just need that help while they are recouping and getting physical therapy and getting better. Medication management is also included in this. So people can stay in this assisted living level for quite a long time, as long as they don't need medical care. Which is the next level, which is the skilled nursing care. That is the nursing home up in the right-hand corner. That is 8 hours of nurses and medical care. No longer do people typically spend any type of long stay in a nursing home. Right now, the nursing homes have gone to a rehab type model, which is all about being released quickly from the hospital and getting the rehab, which is any kind of therapy, any kind of therapy that requires a nurse, like IV therapy, so that they can be prepared to either go home or go into an assisted living. So this is typically the levels of care that are offered. And the newest one that has been added is what's called memory care. And this is an offshoot of assisted living. What assisted living communities found was that there were people who were physically doing really well, but and survive in an assisted living. These were the people that you generally saw hanging around the front desk or sitting in the front lobby just hour after hour, because these people cannot plan for their day. They need a very specific program, structured day, and that's what memory care communities now offer. Sadly, we need a lot of them. So you're seeing those pop up all over the Chicagoland area as just memory care, and that's all that they focus on. And then, of course, the next question is how does this all get paid for? So you've got the different types of communities, your luxury, your middle, and then what the state calls Medicaid, which is what provides for people that have outlived their assets. Okay, so next, Misha.
Nancy, can I ask you a quick question?
Of course.
Before you move on to that, Misha, if you might, yes, thank you for going back to the last slide. You mentioned that memory care is only for memory care. In a memory care facility, can someone also, are there nurses there as well? So people who have memory issues and some medical complications, can they live in these memory care facilities, or are they strictly non-medical?
Well, they are medical to a point. So yes, there are nurses available at the assisted living level.
Okay.
So
they're talking about the different.
The nurses will administer medications and do any kinds of therapies that is required by an RN.
Okay.
So yes, they can. I will tell you the tipping point between needing assisted living and a skilled nursing is mobility. So if you are not able to at least be weight bearing or a one-person transfer, that will probably exclude you from assisted living.
And how about memory care? Is that the same kind of thing?
It's the same thing. So
Okay.
memory care and assisted living are the same level of care.
Got it.
With memory care, just focusing on people with dementia.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate the explanation.
So it was kind of that offshoot because they realized programming is so different for people that just need help with physical things but are cognitively all there versus the ones that aren't. And it just doesn't work well together. So they're the same level of care, which is typically a ratio of about 1 to 8 for the CNA in the trenches caregivers. And then there'll typically be 2 nurses during the day and then 1 through second and third shift.
Okay.
And then they also have a medical director and typically offer a physician that's tied to their community that can see their patients as a general practitioner, which makes it easier for everyone. The nurse has this direct contact, with a general practitioner to get, any meds or prescriptions and things done.
Gotcha.
So that's how that medical piece works. It is brought in and then billed to Medicare Part B.
Got it. Okay. And I'll let you move on to that all now. I just wanted to understand the delineation between those two. Thank you very much.
No, very good question. Okay, Nisha, you can go to the next. Okay, so why do seniors move? As long as I've been doing this, 9 out of 10 seniors want to stay in their home. And that's reasonable. We all do. We love our homes. This is where we want to be. Some will stay longer than others, but as time goes on and things change, it becomes obvious when it's time to make a move. We see this especially after holidays when there are health concerns that really limit the ability to take care of a home. So when that home owning and everything that goes with that is now on the back burner because of health concerns, that's a red flag that maybe it's time to consider something. There's also the loneliness and isolation, and this has been especially true during COVID. When people are at the point where their friend structure has changed for many reasons, as people age and their own health changes and they move away. Many people are still in their home, driving, going to see friends, going to a senior center, having that group, and that's terrific. But that doesn't stay the same. And when that changes, it can become very isolating and lonely, especially when there's that point where the car is gone. So when they lose that ability to drive and a son or daughter is coming over on weekends, bringing groceries and frozen foods, that can be a red flag for a time to move. And many are now wanting to be closer to family. There's definitely reverse migration from, we see the 20 years down in Florida and then people coming back and they don't care about the weather. The most important thing is being near family. And then again, getting back to downsizing from a large home that worked great during the family years, but for various reasons, it could be stairs, it could be many things, it's no longer working. And one of the things I always used to ask people when they didn't want to give up all that space is, well, tell me about the rooms you're living in now. And it was typically, where they sat and watched TV or read, the kitchen and bedroom, which is exactly what you get in a retirement community. So the rest was just a big closet and needed to be dealt with. And so we try to not let that become an obstacle, especially when there's other health concerns and loneliness involved. Okay, Misha, next. So what do we typically see, with the clients that we meet? Again, 9 out of 10 people want to remain home, and that is perfectly understandable. But you need to start looking at the signs of when it's time to make that move, because doing nothing is doesn't mean nothing is going to happen. We work with many people who have been reluctant to move even during a crisis. So we typically see that there's going to be some health crisis, whether that's a fall, a visit to the hospital, before someone will make that move. So we do recommend advanced planning and really thinking about that, because if you go back to the levels of care, assisted living will accept you when you are mobile and you can be weight bearing. And you can stay there pretty much for the rest of your life on hospice with some extra care. However, once you are on hospice and at that end of life, you've now bypassed the assisted living stage and would have to go into a nursing home. So all that money sometimes you think you're saving is not always true. And this is especially true with any of these diseases like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia. As soon as I hear that someone is afflicted with one of those diseases, I know that it's progressive. That sometimes you might see a plateau and go, you know, things are going well. But what we do know is that it is never going to get better than where it's at, and it's always going to progress. So definitely with those diagnoses, a plan for the future is really important. And talking about staying at home, there's a lot of great home care agencies out there. So we at Senior Living Experts also recommend that. And that works great to a point. People will find that the cost at some point becomes prohibitive when you start tipping into needing 24-hour, 7-day-a-week care. Now you're at a point where, wow, this is more expensive than being, you know, in a community. So that's where some people come to us and really take a look at that, you know, knowing that there will come that time from a cost standpoint that it's better to be in a community. Next. And again, these are the reasons that we hear all the time: people moving, fear of change, fear of downsizing, the financial concerns, that loss of independence, the image that people used to think of what senior housing was. All of these things is what makes our job interesting. It's something that I haven't met anyone that's ready to go, even though it seems so obvious. Some are more difficult than others. And so a lot of what I do is coaching families in how to get their loved one to make that decision. I will usually tell them that it's not a decision, especially with diagnoses like Alzheimer's and dementia, that they'll make on their own. So there does come some situations where, as much as we want to include our parent in part of the decision-making process, just as we wouldn't let our child run out in the middle of the street in traffic, there comes a point where it's no longer safe, and their ability and their judgment is not able to make a smart decision for them to move. And sometimes the very thing that they're trying to avoid, the cost or going to a higher level of care, ends up happening when they hang on so tight and let a fall occur, or you know, some crisis that actually harms them more than they originally were. Here's my little friendly cat joining me today. Next, Misha. So how do we help people decide? So this is where an organization like us, Senior Living Experts, really help families, you know, narrow down the pieces of the puzzle, as I call it, and putting that together. I have people call me with a specific parent situation. They'll tell me, well, friends told me about this. Oh, well, that's not an appropriate level of care. Or a friend told me about that. And it doesn't quite match up either in the money or the location or even the need. So we have to look at all three of these things. What kind of budget are we working with? location is always seems to be very important for families. And then also, what are their care needs? You know, what level of care do they need? We want to make sure they get into that sweet spot of care. If you don't get enough care, you're going to have a community calling you and saying, oh, your dad's, you know, walking out of the building again. Oh, we can't, you know, take care of him. You're going to have to hire somebody. That means he's not in an appropriate level of care. Likewise, when they're in too high of a level of care, like a nursing home, when they can do more for themselves, tends to make people decline faster, because now they become helpless. We call it that learned helplessness, especially in nursing homes, hospitals. They're so worried about falls, they don't want you to get up. So you basically stay in bed, and that's just not good for most people. And when they don't get the opportunity for some independence, they can decline. So these are the three things that we're going to try to fit together to make an appropriate placement. Next. So who are we? This is Rebecca and Carrie. Carrie has actually been with the company for 13 years, and she works in the southwest suburbs, and Rebecca and I work up north. And all of us, what makes us experts is that all of us have worked in the communities and met with families. So each and every one of us has either managed in an administrative position or worked in the sales department in various different, for me personally, from the high-end continuing care retirement community to Medicaid assisted living and everything in between. And we are going to basically hold our clients' hand from beginning to end. We tour with families when we are allowed to. Right now we're doing a lot of FaceTime tours, but we typically, our first conversation is all about getting the history with the family and talking about those three things: that budget, that location, the needs of that family, so that we can save them time and not just regurgitate a phone book of everything that's available to them in a 10-mile radius, but what specifically is going to work for that family. There have been times I've actually had to maybe talk a family out of a location that they want so badly, when I know that maybe if they just look a little further down the road, this is really the community that meets, you know, their needs and maybe their financial better. So sometimes those conversations are had if I deem them necessary. But all of us are available to our clients. We have great relationships with our communities that we work with. Our service is free to our clients. So there is no charge to them. We get compensated by the communities that we refer families to. So when we make a recommendation, should they choose to move in the community, that is how our company gets compensated, sort of like a realtor for senior living. So we do a lot of pro bono work. We work with everyone, whether they choose our recommendations or not. Sometimes if they're strictly Medicaid, they don't have the private pay funds. It's not something that we would get reimbursed on within our contract. We still help them. And we just work that way. We are able to do that. And the communities that we work with are communities that we would put our own parents in. So typically, if we don't have a contract with them, it's because we wouldn't put our own parents in there, and it's not something we would recommend. Otherwise, communities are very open to working with us. We have contracts with almost 300 various communities in the Chicagoland and home healthcare agencies. So we work very closely, you know, with them. Our clients will not get, you know, 10 phone calls in an hour after they speak with us. We talk with our sales counselors at our communities. They wait till they're ready for touring. So it's really smooth for the families because they're in crisis. They don't need a sales pitch. They don't need tons of people calling them. And so it's a really great relationship between us and the communities, and just our knowledge of of all the things that you probably won't see on Yelp, because we've been in the industry. We know the people, they're our colleagues. We know ownership and who owns what and who's managing what and who's got a stable environment. So, you know, those things are really important. The culture is really important when we're making these recommendations. So we're really successful once we do start working with the family and finding that right fit for them. So there you have it. Any questions?
I have another one.
Yes.
And if you are muted, I might have muted you if you had some background noise, so feel free to unmute yourself now. I might have muted you during the presentation. But my question is, you mentioned that people should do planning, but then you also mentioned that oftentimes families are in crisis. But if a family isn't in crisis and just wants to plan ahead, you do work with them, even though it may be a number of years down the road before they move in to someplace else than where they are now?
Sure, absolutely. Typically, if you're looking for independent living, you might be able to wait for years. Assisted living is probably a little bit less time. So even if you're still kind of doing well at home, or you know, home health is still working out for you, it's not a bad idea to at least start identifying, okay, where will I go if
Right.
I'm going to need this, so that when that crisis does occur, honestly, the smoothest transition we see when people are in crisis or reluctant is the crisis occurs, they go to the hospital, then get discharged in some form of rehab, which lasts anywhere from 20 to 90 days at most for Medicare, and then go and transition into a new living situation. If they already have an idea then of where they're going to go, it's a good idea to know, like,
Yeah.
okay, when it's time. Especially people with like the Parkinson's and the Alzheimer's. I mean, I meet so many couples that are caring for a spouse, and I cannot tell you you know, it's not only a financial drain, that disease, but what it can do to a spouse. I've seen spouses become sicker than the people that they're caring for, because it is so grueling. And I always tell them, you cannot expect to do this forever,
Right.
without any kind of help.
Definitely. Thank you. That's what I thought. And it seems to me like it's a really good idea to plan in advance.
Absolutely.
But you know, like you said, you know, just because I can't remember what it was, but you know, it doesn't mean that nothing's going to happen. Doing nothing doesn't mean nothing's going to happen. And I mean, things happen all the time. So I think it is wise to plan it. And it's nice to know there are places like yours who are willing to help people plan. It's really cool.
Yes.
And in fact, something else that you and I can talk about at another time, Nancy or Misha, is right before the pandemic started, the Y started going and visiting places, and they would feed a group of people lunch. And we were, you know, I had it on the calendar for 2020 to go visit a bunch of different local places. We got to one, and then the pandemic hit, and so we stopped. But maybe, you know, it might be kind of cool to, when the pandemic ends, so that people can start planning. And I'd like to, you know, resume that and just take a group to a place and have a tour and understand what the different facilities are like, so that people know what to do. And it seems like that's something that will eventually be able to happen again. Do most places allow something like that, where a group can come together and have a tour?
Not since the pandemic.
Right.
Some of
But
them
pandemic.
and I will tell you, some of them are not even allowing a family who's moving in a loved one to tour.
Oh, yeah.
Physically. Especially your memory care places. Those are the most difficult, because from the cognitive impairment standpoint, some of them aren't understanding the pandemic. And so to keep them safe, they really have to restrict the amount of people coming through, including their own family members.
Yeah.
And so they're certainly not allowing people from the outside to come in at this point. But now your independent living retirement communities, that's a great idea. And you know, and that's again, not for everyone. most people are thinking they're going to stay in their home until they need that assisted living.
Right.
But I challenge you to think about your lifestyle. Things can change. As I said, maybe things are going along for you, but what happens if you lose a partner or a spouse? What is that going to look like for you? Are you going to be happy, in that home that served your family well for years, but now you're sitting there alone? I mean, those are things we don't know, but some people do really well with that, that are more willing to move. And I would dare say that when you make the decision that early, I think it can add that social aspect of it can add years to your life.
Yeah.
But that's a hard one to see. But by having the socialization, making new friends, having someone prepare a meal for you. I don't know about you, but even when I'm alone, I'm eating salsa and chips. Let's be honest, like who wants to prepare something great? I mean, even if you're not, the life of the party and really social, just having access to that, just being, in your own private apartment and then opening the door in January and having access to other people to see at a meal or what have you. I highly recommend for people that are really looking at their lifestyle right now and going, and looking at the old pictures and Susie's old bedroom, still in the same, form as it was when she lived here, and now she's married and gone.
Yeah.
That could be a whole nother.
Yeah. A whole other presentation.
A whole other presentation
Yeah.
on that front end of that independent living, which, honestly, with the pandemic, we've seen slow down quite a bit,
Right.
because people can have a choice. Everyone's staying put. But I suspect that once this pandemic is over, I think people have realized how being lonely and isolated can affect your health.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if there's a big boom afterward, for sure.
Yeah, a lot of people have been holding off on making the move because of the whole COVID scare, and so many of the facilities, had to really minimize or stop a lot of those group activities because of the risk. So that even though they were in these facilities, they were also very isolated. But a couple of comments. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Always remember that. So planning really is the best advice. But also, Karen, there are a lot of these facilities, and again, I think we'll see it once the whole COVID scare is behind us. People have been vaccinated. We start having some semblance of our life before. But they would plan actually luncheons or dinners for people to come in and check out facilities. And of course, you know how seniors love their free meals. So I'm sure we'll get back to some of that again too.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm hoping to do that once, like you said, once people get vaccinated and it's safe to get together again.
Right.
I'm looking forward to bringing that to people, because I do think it is really helpful to just see what's out there, because you drive by all the time. We drive by these places every single day and have no idea what it's like to live there. So like, I know at Covenant Living, I host a social club, and we go to lunch and dinner at different places, or we did. Now we do it all on Zoom, and we get on Zoom and eat. It's really kind of silly, but we enjoy it. But we would go to Covenant Living for lunch. It's right next door to the Y. It's very reasonably priced. It was really cheap to go there and eat, and we would go there and eat, and it was sort of like we didn't really have a tour, but it was seeing what it would be like to live there. And I think it would be kind of cool to do that, at a variety of places. So yes, once the pandemic is over, I'm hoping to bring that back, and we can take people on tours through the Y just as a resource,
Absolutely.
and places are interested and willing. So I'm hoping we'll be able to do that again. Does anybody else have any questions? And for everyone who's wondering why Maureen is talking, Maureen is also an expert in this field. And I love to have professionals join us when we offer these types of presentations. And that's how Maureen and I met, was through another presentation. And she's going to be doing one next month, right?
Pretty soon.
Yeah. So we have a couple of experts.
Invite me to that, Karen. I'd like to see. Yeah.
Excellent. I absolutely will. Definitely.
Yeah.
I'll put you on my list.
Great.
Likewise.
Great. I'll do that.
Just to get back, you were talking about visiting like Covenant. these communities are always changing too. I mean, Covenant's adding a whole new section.
Yeah.
And a story that I have for you, the hardest people to sell when you're in this industry is your own family. So they're looking at you and they're like, well, what do you know?
Exactly.
My mother-in-law was living in Texas, you know, in a 5-bedroom house with a pool, and loved having her 13 grandkids over. But we saw that this was not going to be sustainable. And everyone kept looking to me to say, you've got to, you know, help get her. And so a new community with the same developer I was working with was opening in Fort Worth. And it was right in downtown. It was brand new. And, you know, that's how we got her to look at it, because it was sometimes these newer communities are so great for people that are thinking, well, I don't want to live there. Yeah, it's been open for 20 years and everybody knows everyone. The great thing about Chicago is there's so much development and these communities are forever changing and expanding. And that's how we got her in there, was the fact that it was brand new, and I don't think she would have moved into one of those older communities. So
Yeah.
these are the
Interesting.
things that are constantly changing, and that we're here to help people with whatever thoughts they had in their mind about a community, or, oh, their friends are like, go here, you know, when it's like not even appropriate for whatever reasons. They mean well, but it's just so complex.
Well, and you know, I'm sure you've found this also, Nancy, as I have, and just talking to friends, you know, people don't like to think about it. They don't want to think about it. They think it's morbid when you start saying, you know, do you have your powers of attorney in place? Do you, you know, what does aging look like for you? What's going to happen? Yes, you're healthy right now in your 60s, but what about your 70s, your 80s? If you live into your 90s, it's not going to be the same, but they don't want to think about it.
Right.
Absolutely. And then it gets left to the children. And that's where I do a lot of coaching, because if they weren't going to plan, then you have to take over there. I mean, I've seen those situations where son or daughter is going, well, I'm just going to wait till he makes a decision. It's like, oh, well, that's not going
It's
to
never
happen.
going to happen.
You know, and I say to them, look, if taking care of your parent is what you want to do, I will not, that's great. But obviously you're calling me. So something's not working for you. And you're realizing that you can't do this. And it's a role reversal. You know, they become the parent for parents that don't plan. And they have to take it, you know, and say, here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult.
Yes.
Not very many adult children are comfortable in that role, nor do they actually rise to the occasion, unfortunately.
You're absolutely right, until it gets so bad
Until
that they
it's a
know,
major
then it's
crisis.
like, okay, now I really have to. But you're right, they're going to wait until it gets to a tipping point where it's out of control and they're in crisis.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's so
And then
much
they don't have to take the
easier.
blame.
And
Yeah,
it's so much easier when it's not a crisis.
absolutely.
you
And it
think-
saves money. That's the other thing.
Yes.
It's going to cost a lot more money if you allow yourself to live in a household that's at risk of falling, and you fall and you break something. Whereas if you'd gotten the care that you need, didn't have the stairs anymore, and just avoided that altogether, you know. So again, it's those things that you're trying to avoid end up coming true.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, education is key, and, you know, just providing these, Zooms, you know, and hopefully getting more adult children and the seniors themselves on, so that they do start thinking about it and learning.
Yeah. For
You're
those
right.
of you
That's the
who
conversation.
aren't professionals on the screen, the rest of you, obviously you joined this because you want to learn some more about senior living options. What do you have any questions about, like, what's next for you? Like, have you thought through that? Ray, how about you? You're not muted right now.
Okay. I live in Covenant Village, and I moved here 4 months ago.
Wow.
2 years ago, my husband and I started looking at alternative living situations, and he died last spring.
Oh.
And this situation had already been discussed. And this is what we thought would be the smart thing to do. And I've been very happy here,
Oh, that's
even
great.
with all of the isolation that is put on people. There's still enough interaction with other people and enough minor activities that they do. And I know it's going to get much better,
Yeah.
but it was something, your plan ahead advice is very good.
Yes. Oh, thank you. And she wasn't even a plant.
No,
So,
That's a
thanks,
great success story. I mean, those are the
Yeah.
ones I love hearing because
yeah.
that's
And I'm
exactly
sorry for
right.
your loss. That's hard.
Absolutely.
Right.
And that you didn't get, stuck with the home and having to do, you did it together and a decision came out
Our
together.
house was 97 years old, so it was I
Money
couldn't
pit, the
take
money
care of it.
pit.
Yeah. Wow. Ben, do you want to unmute? Do you know how to unmute yourself? So down the bottom
Okay.
of this, there you
Okay.
go. All right.
I am on mute. Thank you. I've been a realtor for commercial property. So Miss Papas or Mrs. Papas said that she's like a realtor. I fully understand what you mean, where you said that the owners of the facilities that you recommend reimburse you. And I feel better that you will be reimbursed. I lost my wife in January of last year, and I'm now alone in the house, and I'm definitely will do it, but the COVID is just holding me down.
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah,
And I agree with everything I heard so far. I have not gone physically to visit any of the communities, but as soon as hopefully the COVID is over and I'm around to do it, I will do it. So I'm totally for it. And if Nancy will tell me where, like in the future, if I want to get in touch with you, how could I? And everything is fine. I agree with everything. Everything was well said.
Oh, thank you, Ben. I'm more than happy to assist you in the future. And, Karen, maybe we can get my information out.
Yep. I'll send Ben.
Yeah,
I will send
Karen,
you
yes.
Nancy's information.
Yeah.
Yes,
Definitely.
Karen, yes. I
Absolutely.
live only 4 or 5 blocks from the YMCA.
Oh,
Nice.
wonderful. Well, you should join us for more programs then. And I see you have a treadmill behind you.
I was going to say, I could see
Yeah.
he's
Yep.
staying fit.
Yeah, you see the treadmill behind me. And
Yep.
I was going to the Northbrook Senior Center, but now with the COVID, I just don't want to go,
No,
I feel
and
comfortable.
you're better to be safe, but
Yeah,
be safe. And if you want to join other programs, we do a bunch of things like this all the time.
yes, I'm well equipped to do that by myself, but it was always nice to go to the
Senior
senior
center.
center. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, something like that. Yes. So I agree with everything I heard so far, and I
Yay.
would like to, Karen, if you could email me Nancy's email, and I thank you all.
Well, thank you for joining us. And I do love, that's what the adult education series is all about, is letting these experts share their expertise so that the rest of us can learn something and then utilize it. So I will be happy to send that to you as soon as we're done, Ben.
Yes.
I will send you Nancy's information. So thank you.
I thank you. Yes.
Thank you. And
Thank
does anybody else, Barb or Perry, do you have anything you want to share? Or
No,
ask?
not really. Not really. Like I said, I agree with everything I heard so far.
Wonderful.
And it's the truth, 100%. And I will. I will. I have a short list of facilities. The Covenant is one of them, and I love to hear that. Uh, what I just heard from Ray, that she's happy, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I was offered to visit that, but like I said, I'm just holding until this COVID situation gets resolved.
Mhm.
Hopefully, I'll be around when it's over. That's
Let's
all.
hope so. Yes,
This
hopefully.
shall pass.
Right.
Yeah, very good. Well, you're wise to stay safe, and I'm happy to share the information, and I'm glad that you got something out of it. I hope that everyone did, and I will let everyone go unless anybody has anything else they would like to ask or share.
No. As a matter of fact, I was going to say that I will be out now after I finish, and I thank everybody.
And I do too. Thank you everyone for
Thank-
joining us today. Nancy,
Thank
thank you
you.
for your expertise.
Right.
Maureen, thanks for kicking in. And Misha, thank you for handling all the background and dealing with all the tech issues. It's been wonderful. Thanks for
Thank
joining us,
you.
everybody.
Have a good one.
Thank
Happy
you.
New
Have
Year.
a great day. Take care. Thank you.